Hello again, everybody. My name is John D. Healy. People know me because I produced a book, and that's how it all started from my friend Tony McGurn. It's his whole life story from 1941 up to a couple of years ago.
Sing on
A DVD out of stories, kind of funny, humorous stories, some of them a little bit raunchy. You can get this on Amazon, and the book is also on audio. My sponsors are Liffey Van Lines. They've been in the moving business for about over 50 years now. So when it comes to moving, let Liffey do the lift and go for quality and go for experience. My guest today is Michael Moran. He's the top real estate broker here in New York City. Michael has been on twice before, and we chatted about a lot of good things. And we're doing the same today. The last time I had Michael on, both Michael and myself, we were very optimistic about the future going forward. We did predict that inflation would be coming down or at least steadying out. So indeed it has. I did a podcast with JP Reddington about how inflation is actually calculated. Consumer price index, your basket of goods, what goes up and what goes down. Gas came down. So Michael, welcome back to It's Good to Talk.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you very much for having me back. It's always fun time with you.
Okay, the last time to make it simple for the viewers and listeners, if they can see us, is co-op, condo, rent. I think the last time we said that rent, if you can avoid it, rent is dead money. Can you expand again on that?
Yeah. So the difference when you're buying something, you're owning it. You're married to the property itself. You're not married to the mortgage. But when you're renting something, essentially what you're doing is throwing money down the drain. It's money that you're never, ever going to get back. So say you bought something today and you lived in it for 5 years and you were paying, let's just say $1,000 a month. Okay. And if you were paying $1,000 in rent, but you buy something and your mortgage and your common charges or your taxes are a little bit more than that. When you go to sell it, you have to calculate the fact that you didn't spend any money on rent. You actually invested in something and you're getting it back. So even if you buy it at a higher price and you sell it, say, for $50,000 less in a down market, which some people are experiencing right now, you did not spend that money. You didn't throw that money out. You didn't waste any money on rent. So you invested it. You're walking away substantially in a better position by throwing and listen, you can't even get an apartment for $1,000 a month in New York.
No.
So that's just money out of your pocket. You're burning the money. You may as well just throw it out.
So basically it's like savings to a degree. My colleague at work, Christine Kenny, she's married to a carpenter. She has a good job at Liffey for 12 years. She has 2 boys growing up and they're all hard working and all that. She is asking the question about switching from renting where she is somewhere in the Bronx to possibly buying. I was saying maybe she should buy 2-family or 3-family, rent 1 or 2 of those family homes. And as you just advised, her mortgage and there'd be no common charges if it was a house, I assume.
Right. Yeah, she'd have mortgage and taxes.
She'd have mortgage and taxes, okay. But her mortgage and taxes in the long run is a better deal than her paying rent now of $2,700.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, the way you have to calculate it is, and by the way, in New York City, in Manhattan itself, and also in some neighborhoods just outside the city in prime locations in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, it is cheaper to own than it is to rent because our rents are so high. Right now, they're at the highest they've ever been. It's slowed down a little bit, but the prices haven't come down. So, you're talking about a 1-bedroom, you're talking about $4,000 a month, maybe even a little bit higher. That's money that you're never getting back. So if you were to buy, especially an investment property where it's a 2-family, that's a great opportunity because the rent from that second unit, that say it's a 2-family and both are 2 bedrooms, the rent from that second apartment or side by side, that's going to cover your expenses. That's going to cover most of your taxes, most of the upkeep on the property, and possibly your mortgage. So you might live for either like free, essentially, or just a small amount. So that money is being saved. That's how you're building wealth. Because when you go to sell that home, you've lived in it for free. You've paid down the mortgage twice. You can double pay possibly, and you're just gaining wealth there. It's a great opportunity for her.
It's a good opportunity for Christine, and her 2 boys they're like, I think 12 and 14. They've
Yeah.
already filled out job applications with Liffey. One guy
Yep.
wants to be a mechanic, one guy wants to be a driver. We have mechanics that does maintenance, but I'm sure he'd prefer to be a driver. But
Yeah.
when the kids move out, then she has the house to herself and her husband, the carpenter.
Yeah.
So good investment long term.
Absolutely. Or get those kids to stay there as long as possible and have them pay you rent, and then pay down your mortgage faster.
She's a good organizer. I'm sure she can do that. Getting back to like the market in New York, I know the last time we mentioned inflation because it's a kind of a pet topic of mine because I studied economics, and it looks like oil is going to be coming down again. And just today, the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, announced that all cars on city cars will be going electric. That's a huge savings in gas.
Yeah, that's actually a really exciting conversation to have. I'd love to have that conversation with you sometimes. But I'm all for electric car, by the way. 5 years ago, I thought they were hideous and they looked like just weird. But today they're making such beautiful electric cars, and we now have the infrastructure for them, especially in New York. But well, that's a whole nother topic. But to get back to the real estate part here, inflation definitely does have a hit on real estate worldwide. Also, mortgage rates have a big hit. So we experienced inflation. We experienced an uptick in mortgage rates. They've come down a little bit. So they're really still very low. They're where they were in I would say about 2007. And in 2007, I was buying an apartment out in Brooklyn, and everyone was telling me, buy now because the rates are so low. We got really spoiled in this country with rates at 2.5%, 3%.
Oh, wow.
And now, so for the last 5 years, but 5%, 5.5% is still very low.
It's still a good deal.
So it's definitely still a very good time to buy. They've come down a little bit. And that's actually helping activity. We've seen in the last just 2 or 3 weeks an uptick in signed contracts in New York City, which is really nice. All right. Inventory is still down. It is a buyer's market. There's no question. All right. But it's interesting because typically speaking, when inventory is down and activity is up, it's not a buyer's market. This time it is. And I think part of that is because you're seeing a lot of people in New York City that don't have to sell. We've seen some prices come down. They're out there shopping for possibly a bigger apartment to upsize, to upgrade.
Or relocating, yeah.
Or relocating. A lot of people are relocating, they're retiring, et cetera, et cetera. And taking advantage of some of the prices outside in the Long Island, New Jersey, Connecticut, where they've come down in the last year or so. So there's a lot of that happening. But if they don't need to sell, they're not going to sell at a big loss. So they're going to hold on to that property, maybe rent it, or just take it off. I've been talking to a lot of buyers. I'm sorry. I've been talking to a lot of sellers lately, my partner and I, and they've taken them off the market, but they're going to be relisting in the spring. Spring is typically a very strong market. It's a very hot market, and activity always goes up, as does inventory. And we have 2, 3 one-bedroom apartments coming up that are all in the 650 to 750 range. And we're getting interest in them already by just the word of mouth.
Those would be condos or co-ops, Michael?
Most of those are co-ops right now. Yeah. When you're getting a one-bedroom in a co-op, you can get one from anywhere from the mid 500s to in a doorman building up to 750, 795. Once you go above the 795 point, you're reaching the price of a condo. So you're getting into a one-bedroom in a condo. Or 800 and up, you can actually get into a smaller 2-bedroom in a co-op. So it's an interesting price point of that $800,000 one-bedroom, because many people might just want to upsize to a 2-bedroom or go condo.
For the benefit of my listeners, again, in case they didn't tune into the last podcast, my guest was Michael Moran, top New York real estate broker here. I interviewed him twice before. But in case you missed that, explain the difference between a co-op and a condo, say for a young couple going out shopping.
All right, so the co-ops in New York City are the majority of our market. We have co-ops, we have condominiums, we have townhouses. So co-ops are probably about 70% of our market. It used to be higher, but with new development of condos, it's a little bit of a different ratio now. The main difference between a co-op and a condo is a co-op, you're buying shares in a corporation. So you are investing into a corporation. You're not actually buying your apartment. You're buying the shares that are allocated to it, and you're getting a 99-year lease or a lifelong lease until you sell those shares. With a co-op, that they are the board is very protective of who buys. So they want to know every single thing about you. They want to see often 2 years tax returns, 3 months bank statements, a complete financial statement showing every single dollar you have as an asset, liquidity, and they also want to see every single dollar you owe as a liability. They want to meet your dog sometimes, and they'll interview your dog. So I would give Fido a little sleeping pill, maybe, if they do. And now in a condominium, you're actually buying real property. So you're buying that apartment, and you're also buying your share of the common space in the building, the lobby, the amenities, et cetera, et cetera. So you're buying that. There is still an application process with a condominium, and often they are challenging, but not nearly as challenging as a co-op. Another big difference is that you can actually sublet in condominiums, where in a co-op, they make it more difficult for you to sublet, higher fees. They don't want renters in the building. And in a condominium, you're pretty much allowed to sublet unlimitedly, but for 1 year at a time, with an option to renew.
Getting back to that
buying into it.
Getting back to that question about the subletting. So if someone like myself was to invest in a condo and I'm away for 3 months of the year, could I sublet for 3 months and then come back myself?
Well, I'm going to tell you that most boards insist on a 1-year lease with an option to renew. They want to make sure that they like the person and that the person's paying their rent on time, so that you can pay your mortgage, your common charges, et cetera, et cetera. Most of them have a 1-year lease. There are certain situations where it's per case basis, and they'll talk to you because they know you're going away for just 3 months, and they'll look at that as an option. You really want to make sure that you're reading into the bylaws and the guidelines of a building before you invest in it, if that's the case. But to get back to actually purchasing it, John, it's really interesting. In a co-op, they can reject you for any reason. You fill out this big application. You've been, working on getting your mortgage. It takes 2 months or 3 months, and they can reject you once they look at your paperwork.
Even if the mortgage is approved.
Even if the mortgage is approved. They cannot reject you for your race, your sexual preference, your marital status, your familiar status. They can't reject you for anything like that. But they can reject you without having to give a reason. So it's a little bit tricky there. In a condo, they have what they call the right of first refusal. So they'll look at that application. If the application meets the building's requirements, they can't reject you. If they decide to reject you, then they have to buy the apartment from the seller. So most buildings are not going to do that, but you do have to meet their standards. So for example, if they say that you can only have 1 dog and you have 2 dogs, they can reject you for that.
I was going to ask you about that, about like dogs and cats.
Yeah.
Can the co-op say no dogs, no cats?
They can. Cats are kind of rare where they say that, but often if there was one bad cat owner that dumped the cat litter down the toilet and it caused a major plumbing problem in the building, they might just reject you. It only takes one bad owner, to be quite frank. With dogs, a lot of the co-ops, there are co-ops that do not allow dogs. It affects the value of the shares because you're limiting your buying pool. So for example, if the building has, no dogs, a lot of people in New York have dogs. So they can't look at that building. So, say 75% of the active pool of buyers will not be able to buy that apartment.
Right.
So it's really damaging your asset for the building, for the co-op.
Right.
Now, condos are much more flexible.
So getting back to my friend Christine, she's probably better off to look at buying that 2-family house, and she will have more control over her own destiny.
Well, that's true, and that's why condos have a higher resale value as well, because they are much more buyer friendly or owner friendly. Let's just say. Yeah.
And like say someone in Manhattan looking, if they were able to put up 700,000, 800,000, maybe they'd be in a position. But what kind of a down payment would they be looking at for that? 20% maybe, or?
So actually, in a condo, you can go with about 10% down now. The banks are willing to lend 90%.
Wow.
In a co-op, this is another big difference. They want to see that you put more money down. So the minimum is 20%. Most buildings are 25% down. There are buildings, some co-op buildings that want 40 or 50% down, meaning you can only finance 50% of it. And then there are some very high-end co-ops that are cash only. So if you're buying the apartment and it's say it's a $4 million 2-bedroom, you will have to
show the 4 million.
Pay $4 million for that, but also in 4 million, but you'll also have to prove that you have possibly 2 times or 3 times the purchase price liquid after closing. That's how tough some of these boards can be. So you're talking a lot of money. Yeah.
That's a lot of money. So getting back to the market, you said at the moment, for co-ops, it's looking okay. For condos, looking okay. Rents are not coming down in the near future. Doesn't seem like
so they stabilized. They've stopped going up. We really, after COVID, we saw rents go sky high in New York, the highest they've ever been, with the lowest inventory rate, less than 1% vacancy rate. So we really, the numbers went crazy. They've stabilized. They're not really going up anymore. Activities come down, but come spring, everybody starts moving because they moved here during the summer months after college, even if they moved here 30 years ago. So the activity is going to really pick up again, and we'll see where the rents go. I think everyone's really curious on that. They can't go that much higher.
Anyone out there looking to be relocated or to be moved, let Liffey, give Liffey a shout, and Liffey will do the lift, and we're in the business 50 years, so we can help with that. Incidentally, we also
shout out to you guys.
Oh, thank you.
A shout out to Liffey. They're the best. They really are. We use them for a lot of our clients.
Thank you, Michael.
Countrywide, yeah.
And countrywide, and for the last 10 years, actually, the relationship goes back a long time, which goes to show the quality and sincerity and loyalty of you to your customers, and Liffey to our customers too, and to yourself indeed. We also deal with...
I've never heard a bad word.
Thank you. We also deal with estates, like say when somebody passes away and when the deceased, their estate has to be dealt with. I'm sure you've come across situations like that yourself, where you have to sell the property on behalf of the family.
Yeah.
Can you explain some of the complications that happen there? In terms
it's interesting because we've had a lot in terms of handling the seller. We've dealt with a lot. In fact, we're closing on Thursday, one on Sutton Place, where both the sellers passed away about a year apart from each other, and the niece inherited the apartment and all of the belongings in it. And it's very challenging because you don't know the value of some of the property, the furniture. We have to get rid of the furniture. This is beautiful antiques. So so we had somebody come in. In fact, Liffey actually moved some of the furniture over to an auction house for us. But you have to deal with the attorneys as well, because the apartment could be in probate. A lot of the paperwork may be missing. You have to find the shares, the original stock certificate. It is challenging, and it typically does take longer to sell something through an estate than it would if it was just a standing up buyer.
I'll give a shout out to another podcaster I interviewed here, was Lillian Kinchor. She deals with wills, trusts, and estates, and she explains it very well in that podcast. And she'll be one of my speakers at an event coming up the 28th of February. You're invited as well. And she explains how important.
I'll definitely listen to that.
Yeah, how important it is for people to make sure their affairs are in order. Because one thing is for sure, we're all going to die, and don't assume you're going to live forever. And if you do, still have your affairs in order just in case, because death and tax is very important. But we deal with a lot of that. Liffey deals with a lot of that month-to-month basis and all that. And we're fortunate to be associated with Lark Mason from the Antique Roadshow when it comes to have antiques appraised. And everyone looks at something, they pick something up and think, oh, it's worth a lot. Maybe yes, maybe no. But always use a professional. when dealing with
absolutely.
real estate, when dealing with appraisals and estates and all that. So, Michael, anything else you'd like to add today before I get you again in a few months' time? And inflation will be lower, and the market
Hopefully.
will be lively.
And we'll have a very different market, I think, come spring. I really think it's going to pick up a lot.
Yeah.
And the next one, I promise we're going to take a tour of an apartment, and I'm going to show you what, you know, a $1.5 or $2 million apartment looks like.
That would be great. I look forward to that, Michael.
Okay.
Okay, on to the next time. Thank you.
Great, John. Thank you.
Bye bye.